It's accessible reading, really, and we made sure of that. My question is just a follow-up to what Diana was saying about evaluation. I'm really fascinated by evaluation and what do filmmakers and their supporters need to think about on the front end, and what can really be done on the back end. I know there are so many levels of evaluation. There's, if you see an evaluation of Arthur, the kids program, it's going to look pretty different from an evaluation of a documentary. But largely my question is for you, Cheryl, and for anyone else who wants to take it.
I'd like to just add one thing to what Karen said. I was in a private meeting with a funder who was looking at the question of understanding the value of outreach. And she looked at me and she said, well, as looking at a report, well, I can tell they've been busy. Right? That wasn't enough for her. So this question that you I would love to hear more about this question of metrics.
And we are, NCO at least, is borrowing this idea of outreach outcomes from the United Way, of all places, who does this work already around their social programs. And I think I know enough about it to just give you an example of it. So when you go out to do some screenings with your film, we're no longer interested in there were 600 people in the room. We want to know that 30 of the people in the room took the postcard, filled it out, mailed it in, and then when someone called them back, they were ready to take the next step. Or who visited your website and beyond just browsing it, they linked to the next place. So we're looking for indicators of engagement and behavioral and attitudinal change. And United Way's done a lot of this work, and so we're just trying now to modify it and so that it fits most of the kinds of projects that you would see in public broadcasting. And part of the dilemma is, Diana, we know it can work for something like Two Towns, a social issues documentary, but how does it work for a cultural doc? Or does it work for a cultural doc? Or does it work for an Arthur or a children's program? We don't know yet.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add, because Karen is actually helping us do some of this evaluation work in a narrative form, and she was an instigator and an investigator for us in many ways for outcomes that were really quite unexpected. And it was only because we've sort of put Karen on the case, so to speak, and she followed up some leads for us that we found some of the impact that was very concrete. We have some impact that you're looking for, you know where to look for it, and some is less clear, and that requires a bit of an investigative reporter's hat. And Karen, I think, did a great job for us on that.
And if I could just add one other thing in terms of the unexpected places for sort of the impact and the evaluation. I know with Legacy, when we first started getting into it, I don't think any of us had any idea that it was going to be the relationship between the grandparents and the grandkids and what the disconnections in society meant to them in terms of housing. And that sort of came up, but it was being able to listen and, sort of key into what are those things that people are being affected by, but also having a wonderful national partner that can take that and run with it, as we had with Generations United.
Hi, Holly Statler, Dreamcatcher Films. My question is, hey Cheryl, hey Diana. My question concerns giving away rights. I was recently at a fundraiser we were doing for a film I'm working on about peace and justice, and there were all these progressive groups in the room, 700 people, and one of our speakers said this film is going to be available for you to take out to your communities to help empower people to speak out, and which we think is a great idea. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, am I going to have to sell these rights? Or if I do find an educational partner and they want to provide those rights, how do I make sure that that we don't lose the ability to reach the people because of the money? You know what I'm saying, because you're shaking your head.
But Holly, are you primarily concerned about how do you recoup your investment yourself, or are you worried about the rights problems with material that you've had to pay rights for?
No, I'm not worried about the rights problems because I know rights clearance issues very well. and I'm not worried about recouping my cost right now, although we're in the fundraising stages for the film. So right now the outreach is pie in the sky, got to think about it here, you've got to do it early, but we don't have the money to finish the film. So at the same time that I'm trying to find the money to make the film, I know that I can tap organizations about outreach, and I want to make sure that the outreach plans can reach out to a broad community, but am I going to be giving that right away?
I mean, I would say no, you don't have to give it away, and would encourage you not to give it away, because that's actually not very intentional. You give away 700 copies of that tape to the people in the room, and they might be all progressive allies, but do you know what they're going to do with it? Do you know where it's going to go? And that's, for us, that's not really a strategy, that's a giveaway. The other thing I think is important is that filmmakers are working artists and need to get compensated.
Starving artists.
They're starving artists. And I think, that's a piece that's really sometimes gets lost, that it's the filmmaker's story that's getting used, and I think somehow there has to be some kind of economic leverage and justice, even within an outreach plan that might get very well funded, but the filmmaker story and the value of that is actually not always represented. So it's a struggle, I think, but I would say giveaways are not strategic and not intentional, and there's not much you could expect to come from that.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
I think that even more, it becomes, if it's something very successful, unless you have a way of tracking it and doing fulfillment and being organized, it's hard to meet the needs of the community that you want to. So I don't know that it's necessarily a money-making or revenue-generating activity, but in putting together that little business, you make sure that you can deliver what's being promised. And I think also when people buy something, they pay attention. Yeah. If it's a giveaway, it's a throwaway.
Right. Okay.
So you guys are both really hitting the strategic message. Know what you want to do with that DVD or tape before you put it in somebody's hands, and then, as Cheryl said, know what you think is the outcome, and figure out how to show somebody that outcome happened.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
If I could just add one small sort of friendly amendment. We actually do give away, like we're giving you, these tapes. But we, and I hope Ken and Judy will talk about it, when later on the day when you can sort of capture them, or even on the panel, because what we ask is that they give us feedback. The community organizations tell us how are you using it, and so that you get some qualitative data as to how it's used. And one of the things, too, that sort of, it deserves some conversations, down the road is oftentimes when CPB or ITVS or someone gives money, the sort of the comeback, or a foundation, when you ask us to pay $600 for, a set of materials, that can sometimes impact, what our response is to you next time. So you might want, sometimes there is some give and take in terms of, the money thing, okay?
Think of your outreach plan as a marketing plan. Sell it to them as a marketing plan, not an outreach plan. They'll be much more agreeable.
Actually, that answered one of my questions, because I was going to ask, is it appropriate to apply, if you're applying for an outreach grant, to say that you wanted to subsidize your, say, VHS copies to go to...
Yes.
Not-for-profit organizations, et cetera. So I'm glad that came up. But my bigger question is, because I'm in the process of applying specifically for distribution and outreach grants now, like Paul Robeson Fund and other, funders that do that. So I guess my question is for Joy and for any, if anyone else wants to join in as far as elaborating on the answer. How specific and how detailed of an outreach plan do I need to have before applying? Because I'm in the same situation as the previous filmmaker. I'm thinking of outreach, and I've contacted organizations who are interested, and I have sort of general overview of what I want to do, but I'm still trying to raise money to finish the film. I don't have dates and locations and this total 1 year scheduling ahead of time type thing. So how specific do I need to be as far as what I would submit to, say, the Casey Foundation? Just as an example, as far as this is what I want to do for outreach, that, you know, would make you say, okay, this person's serious and we should take a look at this proposal?
I'm sorry, if you introduced yourself,
Oh.
I spaced.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't actually. My name is Faith Pennick. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Organized Chaos Media Works.
Well, you've actually given it a lot more thought than a lot of people have. I mean, we get some, I mean, like, well, outreach, how do you spell that? No, well, you don't, I mean, I think we all know that, you know, you do what you do. You are a producer. And there are people, like Working Films and Outreach, Extension, there are people who can work on that. You're coming in with a really clear idea of, okay, this is what I want this film to do, and this is who I want to reach. That's a starting point. And then we then work with other people who can then take it to the next level.
No, because I've had a couple of funders saying, well, you need to make your outreach plan tighter, and I don't know if that was just an excuse to turn me down, or...
Well, did you say who you wanted to see the outreach? I mean,
yeah.
Did you say what the objective was?
Yeah. I think I was pretty clear about it, you know, the age and the target audience and how I would reach out and different type of venues, and I mean, that's why I was like, well, how much more details?
That's pretty detailed.
Yeah, outside of, again, dates and locations, but again, maybe they just use that as a excuse not to give me money. But you're basically saying what I'm, you know, it can be pretty general as long as I know who I'm trying to reach out to.
As long as you don't say this is going to be compelling outreach.
Right.
With web links.
More than that.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Faith.
Thank you.